Welcome everyone to this special presentation. It's part two of our ALA Resilient Communities discussion. And this evening, we're going to be focusing mostly on creating equality in our food system through horticulture, nutrition, and culinary practices with Sean Fitzpatrick of Real Food Share. Just real quick, I just want to give an introduction of myself. My name is Aurelio Muraca. I'm the Technology Program Coordinator. And on behalf of myself, Christina, and the rest of the Danbury Library staff and the Friends of the Danbury Library, we welcome you this evening for this special presentation. Well, we're going to be talking about the importance of local food growing, food scarcity, and how Danbury residents can get involved in this grassroots effort to revolutionize our food system and ensure that everyone has access to healthy food, which is very important right now, especially during this pandemic year. Just wanted to add that this program is made possible by the Resilience Communities Libraries Respond to Climate Change, an initiative of the American Library Association to help libraries engage their communities in programs and conversations that address the climate crisis. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sean Fitzpatrick of Real Food Share, Newtown. Sean, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Aurelio. You're the best. I'm going to go right ahead and share my screen here and get my slides all loaded up. And yeah, really excited. Aurelio reached out a while back, and Aurelio, can you just give me a nod that I have got my
we can see it, man.
All right, and it's kind of all front and center.
Yep.
All right, there we go. Now it's front and center
perfect
on my side too. So yeah, Aurelio and I have been friends for over the last year or two, and he reached out, letting me know what the Danbury Library was up to. And I think these are the kinds of community events and dialogue that are what moves the needle. And I think getting people together and talking about any of the issues that are affecting our community as a whole is so important. So thank you, Aurelio, for the opportunity and for all the good work. Christina, you as well. It's been great working with you guys over the last few weeks in preparation for this. So creating equality in our food system. Big topic to try to unravel in an hour. But what we're going to do is give an overview on on some of the factors that are involved and what we can do on an individual and a community level. Okay. So I founded Real Food Share 3 years ago. We're a 501c3 in Newtown, Connecticut. I'm 40 years old, almost 41. My career has been in health, fitness, and nutrition. So I've been a personal trainer, a fitness studio owner, a nutrition and health coach for about 20 years here, just about 20 years. And 3 years ago, I kind of made this shift into growing local food and feeling out how I could combine this passion for healthy food and service. And it kind of started in community gardens in Newtown. So we are 501c3. We run 2 production gardens at Partners Farms in Newtown. We have 10 partner farms in the region, which we pick up surplus food. So that means the food that y'all probably see, for example, at the Danbury Farmers Market, that's usually their top shelf. It's their best looking produce, but farms oftentimes will have food that might not look so good, and it might not be kind of market shelf or top shelf ready. Sometimes that food gets tossed right back into the compost bin. So what we are doing is we've organized kind of a pickup and delivery schedule with neighborhood food pantries in Danbury and Newtown, across county in Bridgeport, where we can pick food up from farms and get it to different food pantries that are open. This is our 3rd year in operation. Last year, between our 2 production farms, which are on about a half an acre each, one's about a 10,000 square foot, and another one is we're running about 30,000 square foot of garden beds. And between the 2 gardens and a couple of partner farms, we donated 10,000 pounds of fresh local produce. This year, we've kind of expanded our operations at the farms, and we've added more partners, and we expect to donate at least 30,000 pounds of produce to 5 or 6 different food pantries across northern Fairfield County here. We're volunteer based. We have fundraised for paid internships for young farmer interns, which we've kind of taught them the ropes on how to get food started, how to grow, how to harvest, what regenerative farming is, and regenerative farming practices that involve an appreciation for the soil and for nature, and how that connects to making the food as healthy as possible. So here I am. This is about 10 years ago. I had a skin and at the same time a digestive disorder that the doctors couldn't figure out. So part of my backstory here, this was kind of going through a traumatic period in my life. And they couldn't tell if it was rosacea or if it was eczema, and I tried steroids, I tried creams, and nothing worked. I kind of walked around like this for about a year and a half, super frustrated. And eventually, in research and in practice, just kind of came to the conclusion that I was going to have to give up all processed foods. And I was going to have to try to figure out what was going on in my gut and what was going on with my skin, what was going on with my immune system. And I did. I gave up all processed foods. And after a year and a half of going to doctor after doctor, my skin 100% cleared up. My gut was healed. I was no longer having the borderline colitis symptoms that I'd had for a year and a half, going on 2 years. And so I show this picture because it's clear as day that this was probably super uncomfortable, which it was. But also it was a turning point in that I kind of had to come face to face with what my relationship with food was, especially things like alcohol, beer, pizza, some of these kind of old-fashioned favorites growing up in the 80s and going to college in the 90s, and kind of say like, all right, well, maybe these aren't really serving me anymore. Now, I found myself to be extremely fortunate that I had the resources and the education to be able to do this and make it through. And I did. I was able to make it through and heal myself. And part of the transition into Real Food Share after this experience, I started kind of having that feeling like, well, like, shouldn't everybody kind of know and have the opportunity to feel how this breakup process with processed food is, and then the availability of a nourishment of what a real food-based diet could be. So hold on here, cruising along. So what happened in the transition as I moved to Newtown, my family and I, my wife and my little guy, Luke, we moved to Newtown, and I started putting this action plan into place. And at the time, it was the Alice report from 2018 that really caught my attention, but I'm going to bring up the 2020 report here. So Alice, United Way, asset limited, income constrained, and employed. So basically this means, so that you don't have to read through the whole chart, although I would recommend downloading the report. It is 20 pages or so long, fascinating, eye-opening. This basically shows that there are a lot of people that are working, that are trying their best, and are still having a really hard time making ends meet. And this kind of, you're income constrained and employed, that you could be just barely paying rent or just barely have enough food to put on the table for your family. And that if something happens, like a pandemic, or if there's a job loss, or if there's a tragedy in the family, that it could throw such a wrench in the plans that all of a sudden you go from barely having enough food to get on the table for your family to all of a sudden really, really being in a jam. And you can see on the right side of this chart here that it kind of goes through a lot of these towns. And Danbury's numbers are high. And I was even surprised to see when I first started looking at it, how high Newtown's numbers were. And I think it just goes to show that here in Fairfield County, one of the wealthiest counties in the world, in the nation, that there are areas here and around us, neighbors that you might not even know are struggling, and it affects everybody. So I think as it's important to kind of just break through that awareness and know that, yeah, even though somebody might be on the surface, maybe they're looking okay, but there are people that are struggling, and there are things that we can, as a community, try to do a better job of. So here, let me see. Food and health facts we should all be aware of. So food travels on average 1,300 miles before we consume it, at least. Some reports have it over 1,500 miles. It's a long ways. Back in the day, it would be walk out into the yard, pick your food, or walk up the street to a neighbor's farm, and there you go. You'd have your eggs, you'd have some vegetables, you have some produce. Farmers markets and local markets were the commonplace. Only 1 out of 10 Americans get the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables to maintain basic health. Now, that's 10%. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of us. And those recommendations are in the ballpark of 2 to 3 cups of fruits and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day. So in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 servings of fruits and vegetables, of fresh produce. And as you say that out loud, all right, 5 or 6, you can kind of take a minute and think to yourself like, all right, well, like, where am I on that list? And even a lot of us that think that we're doing a good job and we're healthy, we might not even be getting over that threshold. And I mean, it essentially means that you really should be having fruits and or vegetables at every single meal of the day. And that's challenging. Almost 50% of Americans have at least one chronic disease. We're talking about heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity. It's a lot. It's too much. And those numbers have been skyrocketing in the last 10, 15 years and continue to go up. Less than 5% of local budget is spent on local food. So that basically what we're looking at is in our communities here in Fairfield County, how much is Sean, how much is Aurelio spending on local food out of our budget? And we've got right around, that's a little bit less than 5%. So a lot of opportunity there, a whole lot of opportunity. Americans throw away about a pound of food each day. All of us, on average, throw away a pound of food a day. And that's one of those things that when we're thinking about hunger and we're thinking about food security, that, yeah, there's room to grow there. That instead of throwing away, how do we start to kind of think about maybe having smaller meals, or maybe slowing down the way we eat, or maybe sharing extra food? How do we kind of shine a spotlight on that number and think, all right, well, if everybody's throwing away a pound a day, and people are at the same time struggling, how do we make those two sides meet? Ultra processed food is, so here's where I'm going to just give a quick slide here on kind of the combination of ultra processed food versus real food. And there's problems with it. It's inexpensive. There's addictive properties of it. The sugar and the ultra refined flours they're addictive. They are relatable to chronic diseases. They contribute to. They're widely available in low-income neighborhoods and food pantries because they're shelf-stable. They have chemicals and preservatives in them that allow them to stay, consumable for long periods of time. And unfortunately, they're very often the only option. Now, all food used to be organic. So let's dial the clock back a few decades here, everybody. Think, our grandparents or our parents' parents, just take it back a couple decades. And there was no organic section in the grocery store. Like I said earlier in the previous slides, there was just this opportunity that everybody grew their own food. Everybody grew their own food. And weren't these huge industrial farms sprawling across the nation. There were small farms all over the place, and everybody had small farms on their own land, and people shared with their neighbors and got together as small communities. So the local food system was the family, was the neighbors, was the small farms, was the local market. That's what the food system was. And so that it used to all be organic. You didn't have to find the organic section and price mark it up in the side of the grocery stores. All food was like that. And it was grown in healthy soil. everybody was eating fruits and vegetables over the course of their day. You didn't have to worry about the pesticides and the chemicals. All that really didn't come forward until after World War II and moving forward. So there's been a big shift in the last 50, 60 years in terms of what our food consumption is and how that looks. So here's a couple pictures of myself. Here's our master gardener, Nancy, at one of our gardens. On the other side is Dave, tended to one of the beds over at Newtown High School, actually. And here, these are, I mean, growing your own food is one of these, what seems like, as I talk to people, this like lost skill that people have just kind of forgotten about, and we're only a generation or two removed from our grandparents and our great-grandparents growing all their own food. So even for myself, it wasn't something that I grew up doing. I remember my mom we had some green beans going, we had some tomatoes going in the backyard, we had some apple trees, but we didn't really like farm. It was just kind of, it was a little bit. And then I went through most of my young adult life not even thinking about it. But it's nice to get back into it. This is it's kind of innate. It's part of our nature to kind of know and to kind of have this desire. Even Aurelio was saying that, you know, his mom like can't wait to kind of get out in the spring, and there's this kind of feeling that as the warm weather gets going, that it's just supposed to happen, right? We're supposed to be outside, connecting with nature, grounding ourselves in the soil, connecting with the sources of our food, watching the miracle of plants grow from little seeds. It's unbelievable to watch. And it's an experience altogether that a lot of us are missing out on. And I think one of these things is, which I hear a lot at the garden for the volunteers, people come, well, maybe I could just help wood chip or something. I kill everything that I try to grow. I've got a black thumb. I don't believe it. I think it's just that we don't realize that this just takes a little bit of practice and getting used to again, that it really wasn't that long ago. And it is, I really feel that there's this connection inside all of us that we've all got the skills to do it. And it just takes getting back in the game and getting a little bit of practice. And in every neighborhood, there are community gardens. I would love to see these new tower gardens at the Danbury Library you guys have going on. There's school gardens. You can grow in pots on a windowsill. So there's opportunities kind of all up and down the spectrum of in terms of your space or your budget of what you can do. Oftentimes, libraries and community centers, they'll make some resources available if you're looking to get a couple seeds. And a lot of times people that grow want to share seeds. They got extra seeds and want to just kind of share because otherwise they're just going to go to waste. So I think I just wanted to get that point across that at any point you can get in there and you can reconnect with this lost skill and bring it back into the 21st century and establish really what local food used to be and what sharing on a community level used to be. Karen Washington, a farmer and advocate, I was able to hear her speak at the Connecticut CT NOFA conference, which was just a couple weeks back. And she's an advocate. And so she started in the Bronx and eventually made her way to farm ownership a little further upstate New York. Great quote in one of her articles: "Food is given out, we stand online. No one seems to ask, why are we online?" And I found that this is a quote that just kind of summarizes, like, man, there's some systemic things that don't line up. And yeah, like, it's great to be able to have some resources immediately available, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But we've also at the same time have to look at some of the systemic parts of this that, all right, well, nobody should be hungry. No kids should be going without food at schools. And if you're a senior citizen and you're making ends meet, you shouldn't have to be worrying about food. And that's one of those things that, we want to kind of think about some of the immediate things that we can do, but then also these global systemic pieces of, all right, well, I want to contribute to the immediate, but how is that immediate contribution also working on these larger scale pieces, these systemic pieces? So I kind of break it down. I like to view this, and this is how we are approaching Real Food Share. That crisis management, it's a twofold solution. That the first piece is crisis management. So making sure that anyone struggling has access to nutritious food. And that's something that all of us can take part of, that we could donate if we're paying attention to the food waste, that pound a day, that if you are fortunate enough to have food on your table every day, that maybe you have a little bit extra to share, that we're supporting the food pantries and the food banks that are doing food drives and trying to get food to people that are hungry and perhaps out of work right now. And so even at Real Food Share, we got two production gardens going. We're trying to donate food to a few pantries. That's crisis management. There are people hungry. Let's get them nutritious food. Let's not, there's going to be some processed food, which is fine, but let's get them that nutritious, healthy, fresh and local food as well, so that they can get some nutrition into their systems and help them with any of those other kind of problems that they might be dealing with. The second part is supporting systemic changes. And that's really kind of opportunities in business, in education, in land ownership, even some of the legislation that is out there right now that could be kind of geared towards funding farmers markets or funding school lunches or helping local farmers get off their feet and successful. So there are systemic changes that we also want to be aware of. So I kind of think that the game that we're in and everybody's in tonight, that you guys are showing up on a Wednesday night listening to a talk about food security, that there's these two pieces, there's this scale to it, that we've got to get food to food pantries and find that way of the system that the big system kind of failed, that those big truck deliveries might not have been making it during COVID, that we had to kind of turn into these hyper local solutions to make sure we were getting food to food pantries. But then at the same time, how do we make it and get back to those roots of decades ago, where there was more farms, there was more local food, there was more people growing their own food, there was more consciousness, more awareness, more community. And those are the things that we have to keep an eyeball on. So big picture of a wave, and I kind of think when I see a wave, I think momentum, and that's why I chose this picture. I think that with individual changes, with community level changes, that momentum builds up. So you're coming to a workshop and you hear a guy from Newtown talking about maybe how easy it is to grow food, and they've got some community gardens going. And now you could think all right, well, Newtown's kind of far, but what about in Danbury? Are there community gardens in Danbury, and where could I get involved? And what's some things that I could do? And how could I waste less food? How could I maybe donate a little bit more? How do I got to make sure I get out to that farmer's market, to the Danbury farmer's market on the weekends. And are they open yet? Who knows? I got to look that up and get in there. And all of those little things build momentum. They build momentum, and they build momentum on the crisis level, because we're going to be more aware. We're going to be in the local food game a little bit more. And as we do that, all of us, we just start kind of pushing towards that systemic change a little bit more. So we've got to kind of build this wave of momentum on the individual and on the partner, on the community level, so that we can start to really shift and shake up some of these systemic pieces that we want to shift. And that's where the two kind of meet, that there's this individual kind of swell that we've got to start to bring our awareness and attention and practice to, and that we can start to kind of shake up some of these systems and make it change in a way that everybody will have access to resources, to healthy food, to this kind of community level of support. And I love the comparison of the wave here. So I put down some things that we can focus on as individuals. Seek out fresh and local, always. Farmers markets. Danbury Farmers Market is phenomenal. So a Newtown one is on Tuesday. There's one in Bethel on Saturday as well. So there are farmers markets all around us. And the nice part about this section in Connecticut is a lot of them are on different days. So you can kind of make an effort to maybe take try to get to one, or, if you can, get to the other. Local grocers, local farms. There are lots of local farms in the area. And I put a note here that SNAP dollars are doubled at the farmers markets, so that you have an opportunity, if you're struggling right now, if you're in a transition phase, or if you're having a hard time, that you can go get fresh food. You can double your SNAP dollars at farmers markets, which is a phenomenal thing. So not only are you getting double the nutritious food, but you're getting the local food, you're supporting local, you're getting that higher quality, that better tasting, nutritious food. You're meeting your growers. Getting out to the farmers market is phenomenal. You get to meet the people that spent all their love and their energy and their effort into producing food for you. It's the coolest experience. So I hope everybody's kind of getting out there and we'll be ready to flood into the farmers markets this season. Support organizations that are working on the dual piece that we just described, that are working on both the crisis, the short-term, the immediate solutions that we need, but then also those long-term solutions. And there's organizations that are doing both. Some are just doing one. Support them. Get on their newsletters. Show up like you are tonight to some workshops. Ask questions. Give suggestions. Show up. I got to say, working in a volunteer-based organization, people showing up has it's changed my life. Just getting out there and saying like, hey folks, like I'm looking for some new friends that want to come out to the gardens and start to grow food and donate. And people showed up. And I wouldn't be talking today to a nice group of folks out here if people didn't show up. So, I know we're all busy, but you can make that time to show up and find an organization that maybe you're boxing food or maybe you're planting some seeds, whatever it is, but seek some out on the local level and show up. It matters. It does make a difference. Continue to learn, again, what we're doing tonight. Learn about the local food system. Learn about nutrition and what you're putting in your body, how it affects your health outcomes. Learn about your health. Learn about how to make systemic changes in our communities, and grow your own food. Sum up if you can. Like I said, little pot on a windowsill. All you need is a window and some sunlight. Nature will take care of the rest. Toss a seed in there. It's magic. And become a good cook. I think that we're in this kind of, we're in this phase in the 21st century here where people take it for granted. It's like, oh, it's gotta be fast. It's gotta be quick. It's gotta be, I just rather grab something on the way to work and eat in the car, or I don't feel like cooking. I'm just gonna, do a frozen meal. It's the amount of chemicals and preservatives and get back to cooking. It's another one of those skills that has just kind of gone off the wayside. So get back in. When you are controlling what you put in your body, your health outcomes are going to change. I promise. So the more you can cook, the better off your health is going to be. So I brought up, this was kind of a fun one. This is a chart that took a survey in 2019 on how often do people cook during the week. So you can see we've got, over the course of a week, about a third or more than 5 times. The highest level was just 3 to 5 times over the course of the week. That's less than once a day. So the majority of people, and you can think to yourself here now too, like, all right, well, how often do I cook? Do I cook once a day? All right, that would put me over, if you cook one meal a day, that puts you over the 5 times. But most people don't. And there's handfuls of people that only cook once or twice per week, which is nuts. Which means that all of the food is coming from processed foods. That you're seeking out options that are going to be the least healthiest for you. And sometimes side note on that is that when and I'll even hear myself when I say things like that. I know sometimes you're stuck with those options, and sometimes those might be the only options that, but there are ways to do it, and there are resources. So there are ways to there are websites. Even United Way has workshops. There are workshops that can kind of show you how to find budget for healthy food, how to use a budget and get as many healthy items in as you can over the course of the week. But having that skill set to prepare simple, healthy dishes with 1, 2, or 3 ingredients is a super important skill. I've also done the math on this. Doubling what we spend on local food as a community would add millions of dollars to the local economy. So in one of the previous slides, there's a recent UConn review that has about a little less than 5%. It's right around 4.8% of our budget is spent on local food. If now just 4.8% on local, we can slide that up to 10%, literally millions of dollars into the local economy. And that's money that goes direct to farmers in most cases. And that now kind of starts back to that wave kind of analogy, that if we're starting to spend more money on local whenever we can, making that weekly trip to the farmer's market, getting to the farm, when you go to the grocery store, try to kind of check out if there's any local options, growing your own food, spending money on seeds, and any of these things that are going to push dollars into local food creates more opportunity in local food. So it kind of starts to push this demand where maybe farmers all of a sudden are going to have to farm more land, or maybe it starts to create an opportunity where local food is booming, and now maybe we can start to train some new farmers and create some new jobs in local agriculture. So when we can make this shift of getting millions of dollars into local economy, into local food, new programs, new education opportunities, new business training, all of a sudden, all of these things can start to kind of unfold. But it all starts on this local level, starts on these individual choices that we make to try to get this swell moving in the right direction. Here's a picture of me and my little guy, Luke. He's little at this point. I think he was only 2 or 3. But it's funny. It was one of the only pictures that I had as a horizontal. Most of them from the phone come as vertical, so it fit best here. And plus, I love it. He's the cutest in this one. But yeah, I mean, this is about when we're I always try to tie back to future generations, to our kids, to our grandkids, that on an individual level, as much as you can do the little things, cooking, the food waste, supporting neighbors in need, dedicating time to service, time and energy to service, growing food at home, for future generations, that they can see these things and be parts of these things. And hopefully even just as a group, as a team, as we start to try to push towards lowering food insecurity, eliminating food insecurity, and increasing opportunities for healthy local food access, that it's not just for us. I mean, these are things that are going to take decades. They're going to take time, but it's all playing it down the road. It's all for our kids, for our grandkids. And as a community, I think we have the power as a community to come together and do these things. I made a note on a handful of things that I wanted to point out that I think are important in over the last 3 or 4 years, as I've visited food pantries, and we've made food deliveries, and I'm tuning into all these workshops and newsletters. And here's a handful of things that I wanted to share that I think are relevant to the topic tonight. Raising the minimum wage would do a lot for systemic change. Legislation, being aware of legislation that can help provide healthy food access to anyone struggling. That's anybody. That could be senior citizens. That could be if you're in low-income housing. That could be if you had a tragedy in the family, that anytime somebody's struggling, they shouldn't have to. Food is, we watch it in the gardens. It grows in the sun, in nature. It could be there. It could be there for everybody if we put the right systems in place. And nobody, especially kids, there shouldn't be anybody going hungry out there. Education and skill training, so important, especially around agriculture, that we should be driving people into this field. It is so rewarding, that if we can kind of create these opportunities to educate and train anybody that wants an entryway, that there should be. And also paths to business and land ownership. I put these on here not because I have the answers to them, or do I want to pretend like I have the answers, but I'm aware of these pieces, and I'm thinking about it. And I think that's part of that wave that we talked about, that just kind of being able to think. Even you look at these 4 kind of points, you're like, all right, well, let me think about that. Like, what could that mean? And what could that look like in the future? And how could I contribute to any of these 4 things? And you might have, I'd also love to hear anybody else's kind of suggestions, as we get towards the end of the workshop here, on what ideas do we have together as a community, and what things could we share and talk about and try to make better. So for Real Food Share, what we're working towards these 3 years, we're in our third year, is we would like to have our own piece of land. And what we want to do on that land is create a farm incubation and business training center. Now, farm incubation means that, let's say we have a 50-acre plot of land, that we would dedicate half of that land, 25 acres, and break it into small little acre chunks or half-acre chunks, so that if Aurelio from the Danbury Library wants to learn how to farm with his family, and he wants to perhaps get some training but doesn't know how to get started, that he could come to us and say, hey, can I just use 1 acre or half an acre, and I want to practice and I want to learn, but maybe I don't have the resources right now, and I could use some help and the skills. I don't want to make a huge investment and screw everything up. And so what it does is it farm incubators, which they're going on across the country. This isn't a Real Food Share idea, not a Sean idea. I'm stealing everybody's ideas. There's a lot of good ones out there. And there are farm incubators. There's a couple in New York, some in Vermont, one in Massachusetts. And what they do is they provide anybody that wants in skill training, business training, so that by the time you leave after 3 years and you're going to apply for a loan to get your own farm and your own piece of land, that you have this experience, you have a business plan. And this is something that at Real Food Share that we're working towards. And we're using our crisis management piece, the donating food part, which we'll continue to do, to build that momentum into a systemic opportunity change. So the farm incubator and business training is what we're driving towards, and hope to represent that in the coming years, hopefully next year or the year after, as we continue to surf down that wave right now. So as we wrap up here, wonderful picture. Old, young, black, white, hugs, arms around each other. The hugs will come back at some point, I promise. And I think it's a community thing. The gardens are, in particular, gardens and growing food there's something really magical about it. Something really nice about being outside with other people, putting in a little bit of work, getting your whole body moving, breathing in a little bit of soil and a little fresh air, getting a little bit of sunlight. And watching the magic of Mother Nature turn seeds into fruit, and double down if you want it to feel even better. On a selfish level, give it away, grow it and give it away, and you can have that feeling, and it feels good. It feels good to be with friends and neighbors out in those gardens and contributing. And I think that together we can continue to not just make these individual changes and awareness pieces, but we can contribute on a community level, and we can get in there and we can start to push this swell all the way up to making some systemic changes that will ultimately help make sure that everybody always has access to healthy and local food. So that's going to wrap it up. Aurelio, it's going to wrap up the presentation. We'd love to open it up for any Q&A. There's so many things we could talk about here. So fire away. And, I have resources too, Aurelio, I could share with you if you wanted to email out at a second point, some of my kind of local favorite things to, in terms of resources for farmers markets and, local farms and, where you can find those kinds of things. And would love to kind of chat it up at this point.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, I will totally take you up on that. Please send it to me as soon as you can, and I will share with everyone who has registered for this presentation this evening. Again, thank you, Sean. Thank you for sharing a lot of your knowledge and your expertise, and also some personal health struggle that you've gone through. I think we've all known someone, or family members, friends, acquaintances who have gone through health scares that are attributed to the way we eat, and changing that to a more healthier lifestyle, and also getting more nutrition into your body from local farms and eating organically really does put the light on that food is medicine, and food really does contribute to your well-being, and especially food that you get locally that is grown from people that and that's important, going to the farmers market, getting to know the farmers, folks that and meet there, and knowing where your food has come from. I think is really, really important. So right now I'll leave it up to our attendees tonight. So if you want to ask a question, please do so. Please go ahead and put it in the chat. We have one from Patricia. Could you recommend or advise of community gardens where we could volunteer? I think Sean can answer that.
Well, our gardens are in Newtown. So I'm not sure how close that would be. But yeah, I mean, we're always looking for volunteers here in Newtown. I think that so Patricia, are you a Danbury? Yeah. I think at WestCon there's I think the Jane Woodall Community Garden is
Jane Goodall Permaculture Garden, which is run by the Permaculture Department at WestCon, overseen by the great Lori Weinstein, who is I think the former emeritus chair of the garden. She's great. They're always looking for volunteers. You can always reach out to the Jane Goodall Permaculture Garden, and also reach out to Sean. Maybe they can just, your website, they can volunteer through there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And yep, you could also shoot me, put my email in the chat if anybody wanted to, just follow up on anything outside of here. I mean, I think, I mean, part of it also is just starting to kind of hop in and do some of that research too. It's like, all right, well, I know Jane Goodall kind of pops up right away. A friend of mine, Ashley Kinney's also works over there. But yeah, you kind of have to, and sometimes you got to you just got to find a place to get in and just kind of start on your own. And so, nothing wrong with finding a couple friends and maybe, teaming up and gardening together. And, a community garden could be, it's really just more than one person, and you got a community. So sometimes you got to get a little bit creative, or, traveling over a town or two. If you have the opportunity to do that, that works.
I think we're also trying to get, some community gardens getting started in Danbury. I know Bridget over at the Danbury Museum is doing some stuff, on a small scale with the garden club. So they're working on it. Believe me, there's folks working on it in Danbury. It's just, it takes time. It takes time to get started. As Sean has said, you gotta, do little small actions, do little small things, and things will happen. And before you know it, you'll be riding that wave momentum. You'll get other folks interested into it, and on a very local level. So, start, in your neighborhood, or if you can, go visit Sean at his farm. If you want to volunteer, that would be fantastic. And we have another question from Peggy. Thank you, Peggy, for your question. You're doing amazing work. Awesome, Sean. Yeah, you are doing amazing work. Does your group deliver to pantries, or do pantries have to pick up their food?
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. We deliver to pantries. So we were trying to figure out, how do we make this fill that gap of farmers, when they have extra food, might not align with when food pantries are open. So for farmers who are in the season, which I'm learning from doing it myself and talking to them, it is just overload during the season. And it's just really, really hard to do for them. So we're trying to eliminate that entire gap and say, all right, well, we'll just come get it from you. And then, all right, well, maybe the Danbury pantry is not open, but we do know one in Shelton that's open that same afternoon. Or we've got we built a little refrigerator at one of our farms, so we can store it overnight, and then the Bridgeport pantry is open on Wednesday morning, so we can go that next day. So essentially what we're trying to do is get as many contacts of where food goes through, and say, like, all right, we'll just come get it, and then we can store it. And whenever the next hour of any of the towns that are open for the food pantries, we're bringing it down and we're dropping it off. So And even in most cases, if they don't have refrigeration at the pantries, if we get it that day of, that they're just throwing that food right into bags. And so there's kind of that gap that we're trying to eliminate. And farms, thousands. I mean, yeah, on an individual level, we waste food, but I mean, farms, spinach and lettuce and arugula, it wilts fast. So they'll harvest it. I mean, and y'all know this too. Anybody that's bought parsley or arugula, hey, bring it home. If you don't eat it that day, by the end of the next day, it's like, it's starting to kind of get, it's starting to get kind of wilty. So we're trying to get that. All right, we'll get it from you and we'll get it to the next pantry that's open as soon as possible.
Thank you, Sean. Another question. Have you been in touch with the Danbury Food Pantry Collaborative?
Yeah, so thanks, Peggy. I think that we, just because in Newtown, the Newtown Pantry had a nice relationship with the Jericho partnership in Danbury. And what we found last year as we were starting to donate, that we kind of had enough. We had enough of spots that we were kind of capped out. We didn't want to stretch ourselves too thin. And but I think as we go further into this season, and we've got a few more farm partners that I think we might be ready to reach out to another pantry or two. And obviously Danbury Food Pantry Collaborative sounds, I'm familiar. I remember reading up on them, but we kind of got capped out at a point last year. So but I'll definitely make a note. If you're a part of that, I may even be, am I familiar with your name from the Danbury Farmers Market? Is that a yes? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're part of that Food Pantry Collaborative, would love to follow up on that as well.
Yeah, there's, I know we had that conversation, I think last year at the end of the season, that you're trying to have like this goal of like, how much can you produce and give, how much food can one, say, plot of land or one farm can produce. Can you give me the number that you had from last year? How many pounds it was? It was pretty staggering.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did 10,000 last year, and that was the goal. And we, I kept saying it. We kind of limped across the finish line. I mean, I think we just crossed it, but we crossed it. But the point is, when I first started kind of flushing out the idea, it was just kind of getting called to do the service work and get into farming and growing and sharing. Went to go see, was invited, saw Speak, and then I approached him and he invited me up to his farm up in right near Mystic. His name's Craig Floyd. He works at Coogan Farm, the Denison Pessequat Nature Center. And I went up there and they were donating between 15 and 20,000 pounds of food on a plot of land that was less than half an acre. And wow. I remember going up there and I'm looking at him like, my head exploded. I'm like, you guys are donating 20,000 pounds on this much land? And he taught, and then it's like the deeper dive into the regenerative practices and how to companion plant and successively plant. And, but yeah, like you don't need like the first image when you think American farms, you don't need to have, 6,000 acres in the middle of Idaho, that you can do it on like a little plot of land with a couple of people, with a handful of volunteers, without much machinery, and that you can get to thousands of pounds pretty quickly. And the two gardens that we have, we did, let's call it around 3,000 pounds each for each of our gardens last year. And this year at both of those gardens, I expect to double that and conservatively double that. And by year 4, year 5, easily be at for each garden between 10 and 15,000 pounds for each of those gardens. And that's by year 4 or 5. So again, the wave, the momentum that if you get started, that if you can stick with it and if you can find a handful of people and some support and reach out to the community, that no reason why there isn't a half-acre farm that is chugging through 10,000 pounds of food in every single town for donation. There's just no reason. The only reason why is it's just not being done. There's just no reason. It wasn't that hard to do. Yes, it took effort, but effort was all it took. Effort and a handful of people. We have 8, 9, 10 volunteers on good days, hardworking, dedicated, that show up pretty regular. And it's all there. It's there for the taking.
Thank you, Sean. Do we have any other questions that you would like to ask of Sean? And just know, like, you can start, you can start today. You can start if you have a little piece of land, you can actually do it on your lawn. You can do it in your backyard if you have something. You can do something inside, with a couple of potted plants, on the windowsill. You can start today. Right now is the time to start because it's already mid-April. Now is the time to get started, and you can make it grow. Get together with your neighbors. Maybe do a raised garden, like what we saw in some of the pictures that Sean shared with us. It's, just it takes, just takes the effort, it takes the will. Another question from Peggy. The Danbury's Farmers Market opens June 25th, and there's lots of incentive programs. So that's something that we would love to share on behalf of the Danbury Library as well. And, all that information, I think if you just reach out to me, I will get it to the appropriate people and make sure that we share that information. We are always supportive of the Danbury Farmers Market here at the Danbury Library, and we're always supportive of our community partners, such as Sean Fitzpatrick with Real Food Share in Newtown. Even though you're in Newtown, hey, we're all close together. We need to have these partnerships together because we have like these knocks that happen. Like I'm a technology guy. Technology disruptions, it basically means if there's a software disruption or there's a technology disruption, climate change, it's happening, pandemic, these things disrupt our daily lives, disrupt our jobs, our food security. That's one thing that we should hear, as Sean said, in one of the richest, most, sections of the nation of the world. We should have a hyper local food system in place that we don't need to rely on food from trucks coming from like 1,500 miles away or more, bringing us our food. And that's why I think, in my personal opinion, we've seen such an influx of people from large urban centers flocking to Western Connecticut, just because when things happen, when a crisis happens, those urban centers are the ones that we saw videos of from last year, where there's a panic, there's a pandemic, it's happening right now. The food shelves are empty, at least here in Connecticut, in Western Connecticut, we have the resources to go to a farmer's market. We can go to a CSA, and that's something that we should be doing on a weekly level, weekly occurrence, volunteering, at least putting aside some of our food budget to go and support these local farms and local CSAs, and going to the Danbury Farmers Market and meeting the people who grow the wonderful, fruits and vegetables that are grown at our local farms and everything, and just meeting and chatting with them. I know we go as much as we can to all the farmers markets. And you're right, Sean. They're not happening all on the same day. They're all happening on different days, and it's awesome. So you can go do a little farmers market, around the world circuit.
Do a loop. It matters. All those little things, they add to the swell. It all matters. They all add up. It's every single thing you just highlighted is super important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, Peggy, for your questions. And I guess we're almost coming up on the tip of the hour. So I just want to say thank you all for attending this awesome, enlightening presentation put on by Sean Fitzpatrick of Real Food Share in Newtown. Please go and visit his website. What is your website? Please tell everyone.
Realfoodshare.org. Yep. Nice and easy. So yeah, go check it out, and and continue to support. We're in Newtown. If you're all in Danbury, support your Danbury organization, support your Newtown ones if you can. But yeah, start at home base and make your way into your neighbors. So wish everybody the best this season, and plant some seeds somewhere. Everybody plant some seeds.
Definitely. We're looking to actually setting up a seed library sometime in the future here in Danbury after we get our tower gardens installed and up and running. Right now, because of the pandemic, we have just put a pause on that. But once everything starts getting back towards a semblance of normalcy, you will have a resource inside the Danbury Library with our own tower gardens. We have 3. So, one per floor at the Danbury Library. So we'll see about the locations, but please visit us at danburylibrary.org and you will find out when those are coming. And we will have programs like this, like with Sean. We'll invite him back. We'll do programs inside the library. In front of the tower gardens, you will get to grow stuff. And then we will go outside the Danbury Library, maybe go and visit Sean, have a library sponsored program at his farm, or other farms, even at the farmer's market. We will getting out there.
Love it.
So everyone, thank you so much for this evening. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Muraca at danburylibrary.org. And from all of us at the Danbury Library and the friends of the Danbury Library, bid you good night.